This is TWiT.
It's time to talk about Microsoft's favorite topic, not something that makes any of their palms sweat, not even the slightest. Paul and Richard, what's going on in the world of antitrust? Sure. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Why was Brad Smith? Brad Smith being their chief legal counsel, right? And somebody said to me, Brad, come on, man. You had all these antitrust problems like 20 years ago. What's happening? I would say, Bob, it's like riding a bike. You know, it's like you just never really lose the skill. So the thing that's interesting about this case is actually very interesting, and maybe not for the obvious reasons. Brad Smith, the guy I just referenced, was brought in to put an end to Microsoft's antitrust problems in the early 2000s. And I wish I could. I think I'm getting this right, but his first meeting with the senior leadership team at Microsoft, he had a one-slide PowerPoint deck with one word on it. It said settle.
Settle.
Settle. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you guys are just bitching and moaning. Like, just fix it. You know, like, just do what they want. It's not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
You know, so belligerent. So Microsoft, they got a pretty good outcome, honestly, out of both of those big cases, US and EU. There was other stuff, but from a user's perspective, we got the default apps interface, right? We could choose a different browser.
Yeah,
fun. So nothing serious. I mean, they could have ended this stuff so much sooner than they did, but I would say that Brad Smith's tenure has been defined by his willingness to work with regulators and be a friendly party and do the right thing and try to meet them halfway. The best example of that is what happened with the Xbox acquisition of Activision Blizzard, right? Lots of pushback on that, as there should be. It's a humongous purchase. And they bent over backwards, proactively partnering with companies we had never heard of to bring Xbox games to game streaming services in Europe and whatever. It took like a year and a half, I think, or 15 months or whatever it was, but they got it done. And that's been Brad Smith's Microsoft, if you will, from kind of a legal regulatory perspective. So this thing, here's the thing. There are a lot of regulators going after big tech today, US, EU, obviously, UK, all over the world. In the big news, actually the DOJ did sue Apple in the United States, but in Europe, most of this stuff from the EU has been with regards to the Digital Markets Act, yes, that it has established what I think of as a more modern take on antitrust, frankly, that a lot of people, when they hear the word monopoly or monopolist, get off on some weird tangent where like, they don't have 90% market share. And it's like, yeah, that's not the definition. But, people have this idea that that's what monopoly is, and it throws up a block. So from the EU's perspective, they came up with this kind of legal definition of gatekeepers. We're like, look, we're talking about audience size in billions and revenue churn in whatever time frame. And companies that meet those bars have to behave as monopolists do in the United States, which is by a different set of rules, right? It's really just that simple. But I think, we can argue about the details, whatever, but I think the idea behind the DMA.
Because the U.S. is still hung up on the Sherman Act, which is really about measuring harm to consumers, which now you get into the whole game of what Google did by selling people's information to advertisers, which nominally wasn't harm to consumers. So they're not about it.
So we've known for, a couple of years that the EU was looking into, that upset about, Microsoft bundling Teams into Office. I'm going to call it Office, right? I just want to make it simple. But
Slack, right? Isn't that the driver for this?
Yep. Yeah, we're going to get to that because this is an important point. The EU typically doesn't investigate companies on their own. They're prodded by companies like Epic and Slack and Spotify, who feel that they've been abused by some dominant party, and they investigate. And I will say a lot of times they agree. There's not a lot of examples of the EU being like, you're kind of just, complaining about nothing, right? But Microsoft has some DMA concerns. They do have a couple of gateway products like Windows, obviously. This Microsoft Office / Teams bundling problem, which is very reminiscent of, i.e. Windows bundling, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a DMA concern, oddly enough. This is a traditional Sherman-style antitrust, but in the EU complaint. Yep. This is just straight up product bundling, right? It's the classic. It's the, it's literally like the oldest playbook in the book, oldest play in the playbook, I guess. Here's what, aside from that, so that's different. So in other words, we've got Apple kind of behaving belligerently, not really complying with the DMA. You can tell they don't like it, pretending they're meeting the letter of the law. They're not, whatever. Microsoft's not doing the same thing. Remember, Brad Smith is still running the communications channel here. They have worked proactively with the EU to solve this. They have, in fact, made real world product changes in Europe. They have unbundled Teams from Office. I'm going to keep calling it Office again, just to make it simple, to meet the needs of the EU regulators. They are charging less for Office now. And the EU, after, I think that was a year ago, was like, it's not enough. We're going to charge you with a preliminary charges. You're violating our version of the Sherman Antitrust Act. Okay. So when you look at Monday, the EC, the European Commission, came out and said, we are issuing a similar preliminary judgment against Apple. They are violating their requirements under the DMA. Here's how. Bop, 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 bop. And in those 4 points that they made is the answer to the problem. If Apple just does the things they say they need to do, you will be fine. And Apple's like, doesn't want to do it. In Microsoft's case, they said they acknowledged we've been going back and forth with these guys for over a year. Nope, we don't like it. And they don't say what Microsoft should do to fix the problem. It's the thing that's missing from the complaint. Like, yes, we get it. Office is dominant. They made Slack. They made Teams more popular. They accelerated the adoption of Teams by making it free. Not really free, right? Because it's part of Office, but they added it to Office for no additional cost, which disadvantages Slack. So here's the problem I had with this. Slack was started in 2013. Slack issued this complaint while they were still an independent company. Mm-hmm. Slack, like Netscape, by the way, remember the IE Windows bundling thing from before, was since bought by a much bigger tech company that has the financial resources to fight Microsoft, kind of undercutting the complaint a little bit, right? Like, the other thing is, two things about Teams. This is important. Teams is much more than Slack, meaning from a functional perspective. It's an actual platform with an apps platform and store, and it does way more than chat-based collaboration. It's fair to say that when Teams 1.0 shipped in whatever year that was, that it was very much inspired by Slack, I think would be fair to say. But Teams is also the logical successor to a line of products and services that started in 2007 with Office Communicator, and then Link, and then Skype for Business. Two of the three of which existed years before Slack was ever even a company.
Right.
So yes, the thing I compare it to was like, I played Call of Duty forever, like for a long, long time. Call of Duty is a game, and I mean like online multiplayer. They have playlists or different types of games you can play. You could play like a one-on-one match against someone. You could do like death match where it's, a free-for-all, team death match where there's two teams, can't kill people in your own team. You kill the other team, that kind of thing. The flag games and all the different game types. And then there was a weird year where this thing called PUBG became a big thing briefly. Mm-hmm. Actually helped Xbox sales for one holiday season. And this is what we call a battle royale game. And then Fortnite came and blew it off the doors. Like Fortnite was originally a different kind of game. It was kind of like a maker type game.
It was a builder's game.
And builder game. There you go. And they turned it into a PUBG clone. And then Fortnite today is still like one of the biggest things in the world. And so my argument at the time was always, well, Battle Royale is just a game type. It's not a game. Like it's one of the games that Call of Duty could put in that playlist.
Sure.
And so a couple of years later, Call of Duty, pretty dominant game in the first person shooter space, released something called Warzone. And they didn't do it exactly the way I thought they would, meaning they didn't integrate it into their playlist. They released it as a standalone game. You get it free when you buy Call of Duty, right? And I think you could just get it free actually, but it's free. And that was their counter to Fortnite. So in the world today, Fortnite is still, I think, number one in this space, and Warzone has some audience, whatever. They didn't destroy Fortnite, but it's this sort of thing. Like we've had this gaming franchise that's been around for 25 years. This new competitor came along and they offered this one thing that was a little different. And that thing was you get killed once and you're out. It's kind of stupid. Like as someone who loves these kind of games, I've never understood the appeal of this, but I guess we parachute in or glide in or whatever the thing is. And we land on this island and something constricts and you get shot once and you're dead. So Call of Duty, Activision looked at that and said, we could do that. And they did. So do we sue Call of Duty for that? Or is it just, is it proper for this company to meet competition? Right? I mean, don't they have some right to compete? Right? Maybe. Monopolists, gatekeepers, again, they play by different rules. So that has to factor into it. But, Microsoft has had the ability to use a software program that comes with Office to make calls over the internet, voice calls, video calls, have text chats. Microsoft, because it's Microsoft, a lot of the foundation for this stuff was not in that app. It was in, OneDrive or SharePoint, right? Basically SharePoint. And now they have this thing called Teams, which, by the way, the foundation of is what, Richard?
Skype.
I was going to say the storage foundation is SharePoint, right? It's a front end.
It's still SharePoint.
Yeah, the front end stuff is Skype. DLL back end stuff is SharePoint. It is literally exactly the same thing as Office Communicator, Link, and Skype for Business. It's, they're pushing a chat-based collaboration model. Microsoft, which did Slack invent that or innovate with that? I don't know, maybe. But Microsoft is smart strategically because they know their customer base to say, look, we're not going to force everyone down this path. We know there are a lot of 55-year-old guys in businesses that are not going to be interested in this. And so they allow people to work where they want to work through Outlook. In many cases, that's kind of the old school take on this for collaboration, right? We're going to pass around files and the back end will be a little more sophisticated. We're not just emailing them. Really, we're actually accessing files on the server, whatever. I don't know. I don't know what to say to this. First of all, the EU has never said what Microsoft could do to fix this problem. Is it to look at the price of Slack, which is arbitrary, and say, we'll reduce the price of Office by that amount? We're going to let Slack determine the price of Office? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Microsoft has had this product for many years more.
The other piece of this was that there was a moment where it looked like Microsoft was going to buy Slack. And then
that's right.
It went south or really they decided, no, we'll invest in what was in the Skype platform to become Teams. And
it was Gates, right? Who was like, guys, we have all this stuff in-house. Yeah. Why are we spending money on them? Yeah.
Well, plus the relationship with Skype was important because they had bought Skype.
That's right.
Why did we pay for this?
$7 billion, something, I think.
$8 billion. Yeah. Which is about what they were talking about for Slack as well.
Right. Look, big companies often buy other companies to either acquire their technology, which I think in this case Microsoft didn't need, or to remove a competitor, which, if you're big enough is illegal for sure. But Microsoft talked to Netscape about buying them too, and eventually it was kind of the same thing. They didn't have the technology in-house, but they knew they could license it from some other company, which they did with Spyglass, to get the same basic technology, which was from Mosaic. And off they went. And the thing about IE, which is the same as with Teams, is yes, the first version was terrible. It got better. And then it became better than that other thing that we're so worried about all of a sudden. It's not just that Microsoft is leveraging the dominance they have with Office. They actually made the better product. And that has to factor into this, right? Because if this was just about destroying a competitor, they would just do what that competitor did and call it a day. But they actually made something really good. Windows Teams was not always even slightly good, but today is in fact really good.
Right. And that is the whole argument behind competition in the first place is that if there's competition, then you can make something better. So they made something better. So what's the problem?
But I don't know EU as like I do in the US.
True.
But
that's true.
But I will, but US antitrust law, the problem is once you are determined to have a monopoly or thus a monopolist, whatever, you have a different set of rules to play by. The things that are legal when you're a small company, some of the things are no longer legal, right? So product bundling is a good example. Like, when Netscape and, bundled email and web browsers together and charge for it. Like, it doesn't matter. You're tiny. But when Microsoft, this dominant company in Windows and Office at the time, just puts the browser into Windows and makes it free and just gives it to everybody. I mean, there are valid.
We're not talking
reasons.
about bundling it into Office. Even it's M365.
I'm just trying to make it simple. Sorry. No, it is. It's a subscription. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem. It's like, why aren't you mad about Planner or Forms or the other products that are inside?
And by the way, like, what message are you saying? Like, Microsoft has this technology called Loop that has never really taken off, but it is an incredible technical idea. Mm-hmm. If successful, will replace things like OneNote and Word and all kinds of other things, mm-hmm. and it will be this. It will be something that is integrated into everything. It will be a standalone app. It will be. It will be everything. It's amazing. Now, it hasn't taken off, but I mean, you've just sent like, people are going to be like, well, what about Notion? Like, I mean, it looks a lot like Notion. It does look a lot like Notion. In fact, that's the thing I don't like about it. But do we just not get to add? Do we just, like, at what point, like, how do we know we're okay to do things?
Right.
In this case, they've had this for years longer than Slack even existed. This should have been thrown out, in my opinion. But and anyway, Monday came, the EU said, look, Apple, this is what you have to do. Clear cut. It's super clear cut. Tuesday came, they're like, Microsoft, do something. and it's like, wait, what? When I saw the story, I'm like, I can't wait to see what Microsoft didn't do to meet their needs.
Isn't this your favorite regulator lady?
I love her. Yeah, but in this case, she's let me down, right? I mean, people always do. That's the problem. So right, you have to be specific about the problem. My understanding, based on leaks and when I say leaks and rumors, I don't mean like Bob's web blog. I mean like Financial Times, Bloomberg. Microsoft has worked with the regulators and said, all right, look, we're going to take the unprecedented step of stripping this thing out of there. We're going to lower the price of Office, really Microsoft 365. If you don't use Teams, we're going to lower your price. We're going to earn less money. And they're like, yeah, it's not enough. So let's say the average price of Slack per user per month, it's hard to calculate, but let's say it's $10. And the average price for, or the average, the amount that Microsoft took off of Office, Microsoft 365 was $5. I could think what the EU is saying is like, no, you got to make it $10 less. It's like, guys, like, come on. You're just like, how do you determine the value of an individual component of it's not even a suite. It's a set of products and services that runs on desktop, web, mobile, in the cloud. Like, how on earth could you possibly assign a per user per month value that makes any sense and in any way makes Slack whole? Because honestly, the only real answer here, if you really care about Slack for some reason, is Microsoft has to contort Office, Microsoft 365, in such a way that everything is pluggable and you as an enterprise could add Slack to your environment with identical features to Teams, and it would work just as well, even though two different companies make those products. Yeah, and that is not reality.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why they're not complaining about the Google Docs set. That's got its collaboration tools too.
Like I said, I woke up Tuesday. I saw this had happened. I'm like, this is going to be fantastic, because I read this thing yesterday they did for Apple. It's beautiful, straightforward, logical, made sense. It was obviously true. Can't wait to see what they say, because I've been waiting for this for a year, right? We never really knew for sure. We still don't. The thing they said is got nothing. You read it for yourself. I'd give anything for somebody to be like, oh, you missed a sentence. I don't, there's nothing in there that says Microsoft, do this and you're okay.
Right.
What do they, it's like, what do you want to go have for dinner? I don't know. What do you think? Like pizza? No, I don't want pizza. Well, what do you want? I don't know. give me ideas. You hit on something I like. Like, what is that? Like, what kind of person does that?
Oh, I hate that.
I do that all the time, actually. But that's a terrible thing to do to somebody. Like, it's not right.
Yeah.
I mean, look, is Office or Microsoft 365
Brad
dominant?
Smith's response to be amazing, right? Like, that's what I'm waiting for now is, what does Brad say back? It's going to be great.
I hope part of it is you have given us zero guidance. Yeah. Because those conversations, which were private, are now going to be out in the public.
Yeah.
I can't wait to find out. Cannot wait.
Hey, it's me, Leo Laporte. I hope you've enjoyed this little snippet from Windows Weekly. If you want to see more and want to catch the whole show, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast client or visit our website, twit.tv/WW. And of course, there's links right below me.